Hello everyone, my name is Shubhashish Singh Rehal and you're watching our YouTube channel IS Primers. In today's video, we are going to learn about the recently released IT Rules 2021. You remember some time back there was a word that social media is about to get banned. Remember? Social media, all your social media companies like Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp. So these companies are going to get banned. This was primarily in reference to the recently made rules and regulations known as the IT rules. This is also known as the social media code. Now you may imagine the amount of data, amount of dependence that we have on these applications, the social media applications like Facebook, YouTube, and all those things. It is not only going to affect those intermediaries or the company that is providing that service, but it is also going to affect the citizens in one way or the other. So in this video, we are going to learn about the IT Rules 2021 in a detailed manner. We are going to learn the important provisions associated, and we are going to learn the need for these and the concerns associated with the recent laws. Now coming to the key provisions. The full form of the IT rule is basically the Information Technology Guidelines for Intermediary and Digital Media Ethics Code. So Ethic Code Rules 2021. Now up till now I must have said this word intermediaries 2-3 times. So intermediaries, why do we call that? Intermediaries are basically intermediate. They are basically a platform. For example, Facebook. So Facebook is basically a platform on which we are interacting with our fellow mates. So we have a profile, we make a profile on Facebook, right? We post our pictures, we whatever concerns we have, views we have, we post it on this platform and then disseminate to our friends. And likewise, we receive information, and many a times it is also entertainment. So these companies like Facebook, Twitter, even WhatsApp, all these companies, they say that whatever content is there on this platform, on the platform Facebook, whatever social media platform, that content is not their responsibility. This content has been posted by people. So it is the people who should be liable. It is not possible for them, considering the huge amount of people and data that is being stored, it is not possible for them to regulate. So there were concerns of fake news and all, but they said it's very difficult for us. We are doing something, but we are still intermediaries. That is, we are just an intermediate. So the new IT rules are basically designed to fix some responsibility on these social media giants. So let's look at these provisions one by one. So the first one is due diligence by intermediaries. Due diligence. So basically it says that these companies are required to inform the users about rules and regulations, their privacy policy, terms and conditions, etc. Because people are storing their data and interacting using them, so people should be made aware. Next is, if there is something problematic, something unlawful, then in that case, the social media company has to remove that content or block access to that content. So it talks about blocking it. So this can be done on the order of a court. The court may release an order that this content is problematic. Maybe it could be about fake news, it could be about communalism, hate speech, so it can be done. Or it could be on the directions of the government. Directions of the government. There is a problem when I say the directions of the government. Most of the times it's fine, there are problematic information which is unlawful, there may be hate speech, and it should be banned. But government, we have a problem that government maybe, they may use this law to curb dissent, especially something that is critical of the government. They may like to remove it, as was done during the recent COVID case, when the COVID cases were taking place. So India had asked, the Indian government had asked the Twitter primarily to remove the problematic content, so which they were not complying with. And recently some of them was removed, some wasn't. So even the handles of the politicians of the opposition, primarily Congress, were blocked. So the rules are fine, but when it is government, right, and only the government has the power, that is problematic. If the government has to be there, maybe what can be done is there can be a neutral committee, maybe a committee that comprises of a law member, or a committee that is created by the force of a law, basically a committee that is, created by the powers of the parliament. So then it may be independent of the pressure of the union government, or any government actually. Okay. Then the third one is that these companies are required to report if there is any cyber security incident. Then they have to report it to the Indian Computer Emergency Response Team. We also write this as CERTIN. So again, Computer Emergency Response Team, India. So if anything happens, let's say Facebook breach of data has taken place, you can imagine the amount of data, addresses, so much sensitive data is there, or the data of the WhatsApp is leaked. So in that case, it has to be reported and informed. The government has to be informed, and the agency is the Computer Emergency Response Team, or CERT. Next is, what is a significant social media intermediary? Significant social media intermediary. Now, not all social media companies are alike. Some companies are very, very big. So something like Facebook is very big, large number of people are following it. So these are known as significant social media intermediary, and as a result, more stringent rules are applicable for them. So the union government defines a significant social media intermediary as a company which has registered 50 lakh users. So this is a significant intermediary, and such a company would have to, in addition to the existing, they would have to have a chief compliance officer. So they will have to create a new post known as chief compliance officer, with respect to the IT Act and the rules. So whatever requests, whatever things are applicable with respect to the IT rules specifically. So a compliance, to ensure that compliance is taking place, there should be a specific chief compliance officer. Then, now with respect to the social media, it happens that people have certain grievance, people have certain problem. So in that case, there should be a person whom the people can contact. The people should have the right, or should have access to the person who can resolve their issues. So many of these companies do not have anybody in the country. While it is only, sometimes no provision is also listed. So there has to be a grievance officer who resides in the country, which is pretty good actually. And lastly, there should be a monthly compliance report. There should be a monthly compliance report, that whatever request has been sent, whatever compliance has been done, that has to be given to the government at the end of the day. Now coming to the messaging apps, and which one is the most important one over here? WhatsApp, right? And recently the WhatsApp has even launched a case against the central government. So at Delhi High Court, a hearing is taking place. So it says that intermediaries, WhatsApp is also an intermediary, because people are posting message, receiving message. Likewise, a chat is going on. So it's just a platform. So Intermediaries which provide messaging as a primary service must enable the identification of the first originator of the information. First originator of the information on the platform. So this is quite evident. This is with reference to the problem of fake news. Fake news, mob lynching, especially in the years of 2017-18, they were quite rampant. So a lot of rumor mongering was taking place, specifically in the WhatsApp. Then there is also something known as a WhatsApp University. So to curb such tendency and to misuse this platform, the government has come up, they have proposed that there should be the identification of the first originator. So whosoever first typed that message and posted, that should be released in case the government requests. Not always, in case the government requests for such information. So the government argues that it is only under exceptional circumstances where the government is going to ask for that information. So WhatsApp should not consider this as a breach of privacy. Okay. So first originator, when I say, it's basically the traceability issue. So you must have heard about the traceability issue. So WhatsApp says that they have this end-to-end encryption, and therefore they do not have any data whatsoever. They have metadata, that is the phone number, basic details of the person, but they do not know what chat has taken place, as it is not being stored in their servers also. But on the other hand, there is a double speak on the behalf of WhatsApp also, where it says, there was a recent privacy policy. So where it says that it is maintained the app is end-to-end encrypted and it does not share any private data with Facebook. It said that the latest update will enable it to use some of the business conversations hosted with Facebook for advertising. So for advertising, some of the business conversations can be shared for this purpose. So this is again a breach of privacy, and this is kind of contradictory on what the WhatsApp is saying. WhatsApp is owned by the Facebook, I hope you know. So this is it, and then there is with respect to the platforms, the OTT platforms most recently that have come up, right? So it could be with respect to the content, journalistic content that is there, print, scroll, so social media, news platforms, and also the digital content that is being viewed in the recent times, especially with the Geo coming, Prime Video, Sony Life, and all those things. So the government, in this context, they have brought about two proposals. Basically, not even proposals, they are two rules or laws now. So one is that there should be, if there is a problem, there should be a 3-tier grievance redressal mechanism. So let's say somebody has a problem or objection with something posted. Let's say Prime Video, remember Tandav, Amazon Prime, so Prime Video, so they released a show known as Tandav, remember? So politically loaded content, so there was some objection to it. So let's say this is Amazon we are talking about, and they have a problem, and we are discussing the 3-tier grievance redressal mechanism. So the first tier is the company, in this case Prime, Amazon Prime, and they have their own grievance redressal officer. So these two people would be engaged. So it would be done internally within the company itself. So this is the first level. The second tier we are talking about vertical. Second tier is where industry related experts will communicate. They will look into the matter, and this will also include a judge, maybe of the Supreme Court. So this is the second tier. And at the top, final level, at the final level, it will be the representative of the government. So this will be basically an interdepartmental committee under the oversight of the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. Interdepartmental body under the oversight of Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. Now, what is the problem? I'll tell you. Well, tier 1 is fine, tier 2 is also fine, but tier 3 is problematic. If somebody has a problem, it should go to the judicial people. It should go to the judicial people who are not associated with the government. In this case, it is directly with the government. So let's say something like a Tandav, which is politically loaded, and let's say it is loaded against the ruling establishment. Then in that case, there is a problem, right? So government would not like that content to be posted. And here the government has the final say. So there should be a different body. For example, even in the censor board was a different body. And if censor board people had problem, then there was this appellate authority. And after appellate authority, there was the courts. But in this case, the final authority lies with the executive itself. So this is problematic. Next is the code of ethics. So code of ethics basically says that whatever content is there, the people need to be notified. So about the viewer's age, theme, content, tone, impact, target audience, all of this has to be listed. All those Mirzapur and all, imagine people are watching it in the house and all the abusive words that are coming out. So this is, there is a certain section of the people that can see it, but certain section should not watch it. So code of ethics basically says that there should be more transparency about the content being hosted and people should know about it. Now last, it is the blocking of content in case of an emergency. This is a last case resort. So basically if something wrong happens, the content has to be removed or blocked. So in case of emergencies, they have specifically stated emergencies. The authorized officers may examine the digital media content, and the secretary under the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting may pass a direction blocking such content. So you can imagine there are officers, people, they review the problem and then it goes to the Secretary of Ministry, MIB, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. So the secretary may say block, the recommendation is given and he signs it. Now there may be so many recommendations, he may not even be reading it actually. Now after that there will be, if the content is blocked, then it will be reviewed further by an interdepartmental committee. So people from different departments would have a look at it, and then if they find there is nothing objectionable, then the content would be unblocked. So this is there. So again, you would see that it is executive heavy. At every level, it is the executive. So executive has the final say. So this can be used in curbing dissent also. Now, what triggered the IT rules? The question arises, and if you're writing for civil services, you will need to know this. What triggered it? In 2018, there was a case basically which is known as Tehseen Poonawalla versus Union of India, where it asked the government to curb and stop dissemination of explosive messages and videos on various social media platforms which have a tendency to incite mob violence and lynching of any kind. So this is very important, and not only also for prelims also this is important, because this will be there in the news because of this IT rules now. So Tehseen S. Poonawalla versus Union of India. You should remember this. In 2017, this was with respect to, it asked the government, the court, Supreme Court again, it asked the government to frame necessary guidelines to eliminate child pornography, rape and gang rape imageries, all the content related to obscenity and crime of this nature. So something, it asked the government to do something about it. Now coming to, I have discussed the problems, while discussing the provisions, but some of the provisions are some of the objections I'm over general objections I'm listing right now. So first is that the IT rules or the social media code is ultra wires to the IT Act. So IT Act of 2000. So ultra wires is basically a Latin word which says that it is beyond the scope of IT Act. So why do we say beyond the scope? Well, for first, the IT rules is made by the executive. It is made by the government. So we can call it a delegated legislation. So it is made by the executive. Now the IT Act 2000, IT Act, that did not have these provisions. So such detailed provisions have been added to a law, and this law should have been made by the parliament. There should have been consultations, and it could have been discussed in a panel and ultimately put to vote. But this is done merely by the executive without any discussion and deliberation. So new provisions have been added to the IT Act without the sanction of the parliament. Hence, it is ultra vires or beyond the scope of IT Act. Social media intermediaries and even the digital media content providers were not under the scope of IT Act. Second, it deprives the intermediaries fair recourse. It deprives intermediaries fair recourse. Now, what do you mean fair recourse? Remember, I told you have seen by now that ultimately if anybody has a problem, it will go to the executive. So executive is presenting the case, it is saying you block this content, you follow this rule, you follow this guideline, whatever it says. It is the executive saying. If the social media has a problem, it will again appeal to the executive itself. The people who have raised the objection, the social media will again return back to them. So it does not provide a fair recourse. There should be a third party in this case. Hence, it is a bit wrong. It undermines, third one, it undermines free speech and privacy. So we can say that it is violative of Article 14, Article 19 and Article 21. I didn't say this, it is Puttaswamy judgment which says that right to privacy is a fundamental right and it is protected by Article 14, 19 and 21. So, let's say free speech we're talking about. I showed you a post where we saw that content could be blocked because it was critical of the government, especially with reference to the COVID related things, COVID pandemic, those which are highlighting that government has not fulfilled its promise. It has not provided the healthcare, which has shown the problems. So we saw how the government was able to curb. It raised a lot of requests to Twitter to ban that content. So the law can be misused also. A power has been given to the executive by the means of this rule, which is basically a tool actually. So this can be misused also. Next is traceability issue. Traceability issue basically says that now, let's say WhatsApp has to store the data of people who have posted their messages. They'll have to create some data, they have to physically store that data, or if not possible, then they will have to finish their end-to-end encryption, right? They say that we have end-to-end encryption, or they have to dilute the encryption norms so that they can give the data to the government. So this would mean that the security provided by this WhatsApp and the advanced messaging apps will be diluted. So it will be more prone to hacking, It will be more prone to the interference of the government also. Let's say the government may misuse, they may not do it, but they may misuse it for their own benefits. So wrong things happen, we know this. So intention may be good, but maybe some other government may do it. So wrong things happen. So this is prone to misuse. Lastly, in the absence of a privacy related law, the IT rules may be counterproductive, because these IT rules tell the social media company hand over the data of the people who have posted the data. So traceability basically, or blocking the content, whatever. So this may be counterproductive, as in the absence of a personal data protection law. We can call this personal data protection law is also personal data privacy law. Basically, this personal data protection law was in reference to the Puttaswamy judgment, where he says privacy is a fundamental right. And in response to this, the government had formed a Justice Sri Krishna committee, which drafted a personal data protection law. So according to this draft, the rights of the people, the people who have posted that data, the rights of that people were identified, and it also identified as to what can be done with that data, and in what cases that data can be given or taken away, whatever. So all of this came from the draft law, which is known as Personal Data Protection Law. So it is yet to be passed into an act. It is a bill right now. It is yet to be made a law. So this was all we have with reference to the IT rules, and we have covered this pretty comprehensively and exhaustively. So this is a question that I'm sharing for your answer writing practice. Critically examine the provisions of the Information Technology Guidelines for Intermediaries and Digital Media Ethics Code, Rules 2021. Critically examine. I would also like to give you a suggestion that you should jot down the key provisions of the IT rules, because such questions have also been asked, and you should know the pros and cons. So this question will help you with the pros and cons. So this is it. Thank you for streaming into this video. Once again, you're watching IS Primers, and I am Shubhashish Singh Rehal. Please do like, share and subscribe, and all the best for your preparation. Bye-bye.